Mr. Sandman, bring me a dream. Make him the cutest that I've ever seen. Give him two lips like roses and clover, and tell him that his lonesome nights are over. Sandman, I'm so alone, don't have nobody to call my own. Please turn on your magic beam. Mr. Sandman, bring me a dream.
Good evening and welcome to Nox Mente. Finally, tonight's guest is Jeremy Crow, occultist, author, musician, and community organizer. Jeremy's having some audio trouble. We're not sure if it's us or them, so bear with us tonight. Thank you. Jeremy, welcome to the show.
Hello and welcome, Jeremy. Of course, we're starting right out of the gate like this.
He keeps cutting out. We don't know why.
Yeah, sorry.
All right. So when you hear his background noise, we know his mic's working.
But I don't hear... Jeremy, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Okay, cool. Let's just get started then.
Okay.
So, tell us a little bit about the world you grew up in. What influenced very young you, or like back into the earliest formative years? What part of the country, you're in Canada, you grew up in? Was there a big city by or big woods? What symbols influenced you? Were you religious as a child? All that kind of stuff. Paint us a picture.
Yeah, well, I grew up in Ontario, Canada, southern Ontario, Canada, so kind of near the American border-ish. It's not really that close to a big city, more kind of on the outskirts around medium-sized cities, I guess, sort of on the outskirts of city areas. I guess the big things that really influenced me as a kid were that I wanted to understand how things worked. And so I used to tear apart electronics all the time and try and put them back together, sometimes with success, sometimes not. But, I learned some stuff just kind of tearing stuff apart and putting it back together. And also, religion was actually a fairly big influence on me as well. Not really, really early, but my parents wanted to put me in Catholic school. And to go into Catholic school, you needed to be baptized. And I hadn't actually been baptized as an infant. And so they brought me in to get baptized when I was about 4. I think I was about 4, maybe 5 at the latest. So they had to explain to me what it all meant. And that got me thinking, and, when you're really little, you believe what your parents tell you. And so I was it kind of opened me up into a world of, at that time, that's kind of the age when especially little boys, I think, are really interested in magic, like stage magic. And so being at that age and also kind of being introduced to religion at the same time, and a very ritualistic religion too, Catholicism, I kind of feel like that, along with my kind of drive to understand how things work, kind of led me to become like a Gnostic type personality, right from the early stages. I used to question the religious stuff, although like wonder and naivety, that you have when you're really little.
Did you study any prestidigitation or explore that area much?
Yeah, I did when I was quite young, especially card games. I like not just games, but like card tricks. I found myself drawn to cards very early on, and that's a passion that stuck with me. My grandmother, my father's mother, full native, she would do her own type of cartomancy. She would sometimes play solitaire over and sat down with her when she was doing it, it would suddenly turn into a reading. Or maybe it was a reading before, but she was doing it in her head. I don't know.
That's
But
wonderful.
you'd sit down and she'd be playing solitaire, and then as she's flipping up the various cards and laying them down on in the spots, she would be interpreting it for you, you know. And I always thought that was really cool that she was able to actually turn that card game into a reading.
How well were her readings? How good were they?
um, I think it's a lot of it was more kind of in the sense of fun, but she did use a lot of kind of the traditional, a lot of the traditional meanings that she would kind of utilize when she did it, and it was pretty cool. It wasn't. It was a very general kind of thing. Like, it wasn't very, very specific things, but it was definitely something that we enjoyed.
It sounds wonderful. I love a grandma that will give you readings.
And then my father, he would do tea leaf readings.
Oh,
And so he taught me how to do that quite young as well, which I thought was a cool, not trick, but, you know, magic. I kind of thought of tricks and real magic in the kind of within the same realm. You know, I thought that if I just found the right book, that it would show me the real stuff and not just the illusionist stuff. You know. And eventually I did find those books, you know.
It's like the Necronomicon is what you're looking for, right?
Yeah, well, I did start finding those books of real magic, and actually the first ones that I found were on my father's bookshelf. He had quite the personal library, with all kinds of different subjects, and some of them were esoteric, and it was funny him catching me reading them very, you know, at very young ages, and then he'd be like, "Careful about messing around with that stuff," he'd say.
which one or two particularly caught your attention the most, or had the most grit for you?
Well, there was one in particular, Zolar's,
Yes.
what was it, encyclopedia.
That's a great one. I
You know
have
that
it.
one? Yeah.
Yes, I have. I have an old copy.
And so he had that, and what I found really awesome, and I would laugh with my friends about some of these things later as a teenager, but I'd pull it out and show them some of these things, but there was names for some of the most obscure forms of divination in that book. Like, I can't remember some of the names, but one of them involved spinning around in a circle that on the
It's him, not us, right? Hello?
Hello?
Okay. It's Jeremy.
Oh dear. Looks like Jeremy's still talking though. His thing was green. Oh my. He can't hear you.
I wish my dad had magic books on his bookshelf. That would have been great.
That Zolar book is awesome. I've got a hardbound old, I think it's like 70s.
I never heard of it.
If I wasn't tethered to this setup right here, I'd go pull it. Yeah, it's great. I got mine when I lived in LA. It was an old copy, and a friend who has a cool antique store. Are you back, Jeremy?
Hey, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Dude,
Yeah,
we have like
the entire time.
This has been the most interference show so far.
You just cut out now.
So okay, so when did you
I was saying it's funny because I was saying it's weird because I can hear you guys just fine, and then you fell out.
Okay, wow. Who brought the demons to the show? Not allowed.
I know, seriously, who is lighting some sigils? When did you find your way out of Christianity, out of Catholicism?
Wasn't really until I was a teenager that I fully kind of decided to break out of the Christian thing. And even then, there was kind of a lingering dalliance with Christianity for a while. So basically, once I hit 17 was when my whole paradigm shifted into the occult full time. So I had, brushes with the occult and the esoteric through my whole life. Lucid dreaming, divination, like we had talked about before.
Yes.
And things like that. But once I was 17, that's when I took up the study of occultism and practice in earnest. And I started exploring other religions and spiritual paths, but I did still have a connection with esoteric Christianity and that whole Abrahamic paradigm, like Kabbalah, Hermeticism, Gnosticism.
Well, it's all quite juicy.
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff in there.
Oh no.
Which book was it? The Ancient and Forbidden Knowledge?
Jeremy? Jerry lights some more incense. I would if I was close.
Got two sticks going.
Am I gone again? Yes, Jeremy, you're gone. Zolar's I can't
Ancient and Forbidden Knowledge?
Yeah,
He's got a Dictionary of Dreams too.
I have the Ancient and Forbidden Knowledge one.
I put a link in chat.
Yeah, you're still gone, Jeremy.
This isn't microphone, this is bandwidth or something.
And some juju. This has got to be some extra juju. I know that there's that huge storm over the east coast right now, like up in the sky. Where they call it like bomb clouds or something. It's crazy.
They were talking about a possible nor'easter coming in, right?
Yeah. So I think that this could be related to whatever weather is happening, actually. Because he's over there.
It's snowing
in that area. And then you're also east, Jerry.
Mm-hmm. It's just cold here.
Oh man, Jeremy. So people in the listening, we see Jeremy in our chat here on Zoom. So he's still here. Just not in sound.
But in spirit.
Oh my God. So I'm wondering if we should do a non-live stream with Jeremy like this week or something. My mic doesn't say mute either. Yeah, this is so weird.
So we just can't hear him.
Well, of course, too. I mean, I have been, we waited all our shows are booked 2 months out. So it's been a while, that we wait to see people.
I know.
I'd be okay with trying again on another day if that's what you want.
It's up to you. I'm good.
I really want this to work, but I want a cohesive archive of talking about dreams with you.
So he can hear us and.
Yeah. So for the sake of like later and not just live stream, I'd like to have something that is smooth.
Definitely. He can always call in on his cell phone.
Into Zoom?
Yeah.
Jeremy, can you try that? He said he can do that. Okay, cool.
Let me get you the number. It's an 800 number too. Oh, I see. There's 2 versions.
I heard you briefly, Jeremy. I heard you typing. I have USA Unlimited calling too. Awesome.
Okay. Here's the thing.
This is where we do our intermission music.
I got intermission music somewhere.
Jerry, do the intermission music. It'd be so awesome. Da, 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 da.
Let's all go to the lobby.
Let's all go to the lobby.
Right, get it
We
going.
need a little jumping around wiener and bun.
What the fuck? What?
Okay, so Jerry, post the link to the Zolar in our little chat here so I can see. Is it like an Amazon link? How much is it now?
Yeah, $20.
Jeremy said meeting ID.
It's the last 9 digits or so in that string I sent you.
680-604-152.
Now everyone's going to hack into our meeting. Good job.
Oh, geez. You have us on. We're still on live.
Yeah, we're still live.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Nobody's pounding on something.
This cover on this Solars looks totally different. Mine's like so 70s. When does it say? June 2004. So this has clearly been revamped.
Hello,
Oh, look at that.
it's me.
We hear you.
Yay.
Okay, and you muted my other one, I see.
I
so
just did that, yes.
just in case it clicks back in.
This is going to work, I think. I have a good feeling. Yes.
Yeah, I think I'm hoping this will work. So
This is going to work. So let's just get back into it. So
yeah,
in this beginning kind of section, we like to just get an idea of your formative stuff, which you gave us, and symbols that you were working with, and possible catharsis, like from one religion to another. And in your case, you got deep into the occult, which in that is a lot of, we work with dreams and symbols, and all this stuff becomes a little more highlighted. So, so just in this background bit, what sign are you?
depends on whether you mean tropical or
Or
sidereal.
Vedic? Yeah, so on either. It's usually just the 1 and 2.
More importantly, whichever
so-
one you feel, resonates with you. I hate to use that term, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, well, for the longest time, I thought that I was Capricorn because the standard tropical zodiac says that I'm Capricorn. My birthday's actually in just a few days. I'll be turning 40.
Ooh, the 40 Club.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And
So would that make you Pisces and sidereal?
in sidereal,
I was Capricorn. All right.
it's Sagittarius. It's the other direction.
Oh, yeah, it goes the other
Yeah.
way. Yeah. And you relate to that more so than Capricorn?
Well, I kind of feel like I kind of feel like maybe the cusp between them makes
Yeah.
sense to me.
Yeah.
because the Capricorn thing kind of made sense a lot to me especially when I connected with the tarot, because the tarot is kind of a really big thing with me, and I kind of look at everything kind of from that basis. And the tarot card that is related with Capricorn is the Devil card, which
Yes.
of course I resonate with quite a bit. But the other one, Sagittarius, is temperance, or in Crowley's version, he calls it art.
Yes.
And it kind of, to me, when I look at that card, I see, I'm developing a tarot deck of my own. Well, I've been developing one for years and years. I have my own internal one. But in my own internal deck, I would call that card the Alchemist.
Okay.
And so that's the Sagittarius one. So I kind of feel like I'm kind of between the two. Both of those really resonate with me.
This is why I like mixing the two myself, because I think there is a meshing of the energies. But I can totally see the Sag energy in you just from everything you put forth. So learn the depth of knowledge and the expanse in which you have spread out into seems very Sagittarian to me. Plus, you're a good teacher.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, so this is kind of the end of this little intro section. But have you done psychedelics, and if so, what has been the best as far as altered states?
Yeah, I have. In terms of altered states, and the best in terms of altered states is kind of hard to put into a best kind of category, because they all kind of have their own teaching experience, I would say. But kind of my preferred one, I would say that I've felt the most resonant with, I suppose you could say, or the most I don't know the word to use, but the one that I would say would be the best would be psilocybin.
Best of jive with you.
Yeah, mushrooms seem to make them have the biggest kind of positive effect, and beyond just kind of partying. People will try things out for party purposes, hedonistic. But in terms of something that actually seems to have some sort of psychic, spiritual, whatever kind of word you want to use to describe that subtle aspect, I would say that the magic mushroom, psilocybin,
yes,
the most useful.
I agree with that. It's almost hard to avoid, actually, that the otherness to the experience, for me at least. Okay, so I would want to go into that deeper, but since we're already so I want to get right into the dreams. So give us an idea of your dream experience. How do you tell us about the landscape? Is it black and white? Is it color? Is it both? Are you able to cipher or siphon words and glyphs and numbers? This whole, just a general, where you are generally with the dream world these days.
Yeah, well, it's probably the biggest part of my whole practice is dreaming. And I feel like I never stop dreaming. I feel like this we're in a dream right now. This is a form of dreaming, right, that we're experiencing in the moment. Mm-hmm. So that's how much dreaming is a important part of my practice. It's all consuming. So everything is, well, not everything. There are experiences that you have where dreaming is not there, where it's just kind of a pure consciousness experience. But in that that experience is almost kind of marked by the uniqueness of the dream not being there, by the absence of dream, kind of.
Yes.
It's defining element almost. So even there, it's still about dreaming in a sense. When I was really young, I used to have really bad nightmares, like a lot, and I was complaining about it to my mom. And I was really little, like this is before I knew how to read or anything, before I was even in school, right? And I remember she said to me one time, well, it's your dream. Don't let them push you around, the dream monsters or whatever, right? And it just kind of blew my mind. That really triggered something in me. I had an epiphany, one of those aha moments. And the next time that I had a nightmare, there was like a skeleton, an animated skeleton coming to, mess with me and my mom in the dream. And maybe my mom being in the dream helped me remember what she had said. But in the dream, I remembered it. And I was like, yeah, this is my dream. I'm not going to let you push me around. And I turned myself into a superhero kind of, and went and smashed the skeleton. And then I woke up and I felt like so accomplished. I was like, yes, it worked. And that was like
seriously great.
That was my first lucid dream.
And that she shows up in the dream, and then you use that as a cue. This is great.
Exactly. That's a great way to break that down. Because that was my first lucid dream, and it was triggered by something that was anchored into my consciousness during waking life.
Yes.
And then came up again in the dream, reminding the dream me, And that's how it always happens, essentially, right?
So when you were young, you were already in that state of getting lucid and having astral experiences?
Yeah. And so that actually happened quite a bit, here and there throughout my life. It wasn't like a daily thing, but it was something that happened here and there. And when I became a teenager and started getting access to the internet, because when I was a kid, there was no internet.
Oh yeah, I know.
So when around my teenage years is when I started actually getting like access to the internet. And one of my friends said, hey, we got internet at my place. Why don't you come over and we can look up lucid dreaming? And I said, what is that? And he said, I don't know. It just has a really cool name, and I want to look it up and find out what it is. And I was like, oh, that's weird. But let's look it up. And we looked it up, and I was like, oh, I know what this is. But I didn't realize there were things you could do to make it happen more often. And then that sparked a whole new, level of my kind of involvement in lucid dreaming and astral experiences, because it took it more into my conscious control, in the sense that I wasn't just kind of waiting for it to happen randomly. But
right now it's consciously a thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you have these experiences, so back in and maybe perhaps now, but I suspect it's more earlier, so not quite, I don't actually know what the term is, and if you do, I'd love you to educate me on it, but where you are lying there in the bed and it's a liminal state, kind of, but you're more conscious, and where you're shifting, you're getting taller and smaller, maybe spinning a little, maybe going under the bed and over, but you're not in dream at all. You're writing that out through a conscious wave. Is this happening for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I know exactly what you're talking about. It's called Hypnagogic.
That's actually hypnagogic, where you're actually stretching and moving your etheric body.
Yeah, you get like these senses of body dysmorphia, where sometimes it feels like you're shrinking, or you're turning into yourself. Almost sometimes it feels like your arm is like twisted backwards, but it's not.
Yes.
Things like that, right? And if your eyes are closed, sometimes you'll see blobs of color and that are kind of moving.
Yes.
And changing.
Yeah.
Like clouds. Yeah.
It's interesting. I always thought hypnagogic was more when you were closer to being unconscious and not actually laying there awake. So maybe
I thought it was always the space between, that liminal state.
Well, the thing is the level of consciousness is the level of self-consciousness, or the conscious mind being present. It can be present through the whole process of when you fall asleep.
Yes.
I know it sounds weird, but you can maintain that consciousness and your body falls asleep fully.
Yeah. And so that's, I think, more what I meant. And of course, you're being so astute is making this very easy to chew this fodder. So the so you have experienced that, and
it's kind of like a sleep paralysis.
Yeah, but it's more fun. I've always found it very pleasurable, like that whole, like, oh, I can be a million miles long, or I can be a tiny dot, or I can spin. The spinning's always been my favorite, like head over heels spinning, where I'm kind of on an axis, though.
Yeah. When I first started experiencing it, it was kind of disturbing.
Really?
When I was young and I first started experiencing that, it kind of freaked me out a little. But,
what freaked me out was the colors that you were just talking about. Like that stuff with the body, dysmorphic stuff, was kind of felt like carnival fun. The colors, like seeing shapes and colors, is where I got a little bit nervous. Like, what are these?
Oh, that's funny, because it's kind of the opposite for me. The colors I didn't have any problem with, but the body dysmorphia feelings always kind of freaked me out.
So where are you today with it? Do you just go into, do you tell yourself, Jeremy, that I'm going to, do you set goals and then attain them through the process of powering your body down and moving to the etheric plane?
Yeah, but it still takes work. So even after all these years, I still have to put in the work to get the result. If I stop putting in the work, then I stop getting the results. Like, you have to maintain even just the basic kind of stuff, like a dream journal, even just point form or a voice recording of point form. Something you have to do. You have to have, like, some of the foundations have to, still, you have to maintain those. Otherwise it goes away. You lose it. Or for me it does. I know there are people who, they have a lucid. I know there's one of my friends, and she has every single dream she has is lucid, and she doesn't have to try.
Wow. That's great.
Yeah, but she's also had to deal with narcolepsy for a lot of her life, and it's not so bad now. Like, she's managed to figure out ways of managing it so that it doesn't affect her life nearly as much as it used to. But she does also have narcolepsy, so that's kind of a trade-off.
Is that a common feature of narcoleptics?
I'm not sure. I mean, she's the only narcoleptic that I know. So
that's really, really interesting. If it is,
it is very interesting.
That would mean.
I mean, it definitely seems related.
It does. That just means, like, the narcolepsy is uncertain what state you're in at any one time. Right?
Yeah,
or that you're on at both. You're on all the time, and your body doesn't care which one. I don't know. It's weird.
So tell us of if you have them any longer, but anything that may qualify as terrors or nightmares that are beyond just the daily stuff that are, your maybe surface level concerns, stuff that seems like deeper stuff, perhaps with other entities or others in the dreamscape.
Yeah, well, what does happen, on a rare, it doesn't happen very often. It happens quite rarely, but when it does happen, it's unforgettable. Where you're in that in-between state. So, like, the thing is, when you've done a lot of lucid dreaming and you've experienced it quite often, you'll have there's certain experiences that you'll have that just come up eventually. And one of them is where you will go through a transition from dream to waking, in like the reverse of getting into a lucid dream. But leaving a lucid dream, it happens so gradually sometimes that you're not really sure at what point you're not awake anymore, or sorry, what point you go from being asleep to awake. It's such a gradual transition between those two states, and that it blends like a fader.
Mm-hmm.
There's no one point where you're not asleep anymore and suddenly you're awake. It's a gradient. And so sometimes when you're in that middle point, some terrifying stuff happens with entities that you encounter.
Do you have any good examples?
Oh, I had a question. Sorry.
Yeah, well, one time, the creepiest that I can remember, those chimes.
I know, I'm
perfect timing.
The winds are coming
like
in.
They're the synchronicity chimes.
And then in the background, it's like...
we call them the synchronicity chimes.
But yeah, probably one of the creepiest ones that I ever experienced, where I was lying in bed and just, in that in between state, and I hear in the hallway just outside my room 3 female voices cackling evilly, like this wicked kind of laugh. and I thought in my head of the 3 witches from Macbeth, or like the 3 fates or something like that. And I was like, they're out there laughing, giggling, and is that me in here? And so that was pretty creepy, and I kind of knew that I was in that state, so that did give me a bit of a buffer. I wasn't caught up in it, in the sense where, but it was still, and that's I think that's some of the creepiest experiences I've had were not ones that I got caught up in, but the ones that I knew I was in a altered state, but still it creeped me out.
That's intense, actually.
So
the
beyond
first
that,
thing I think of is Macbeth. Yes. Sorry, continue.
Yeah. So that set the stage, and then suddenly there was a dark goddess, a dark nature goddess, in my room right beside my bed, and basically had like moss and like kind of like bits of seaweed or something, like those types of like hangy vegetation stuff hanging from her dress that was kind of dirty, and she looked like a dark goddess. She had like this green aura around her. Yeah, after the cackling stopped, it just kind of suddenly stopped, and I was like, "Oh, it's gone." And then all of a sudden, there was this figure in my room right beside me, and giving off like really intimidating presence, and starts telling me about how I'm going to die.
Oh, wow.
You're going to die. You're going to die. stuff like that. And in a way, almost like saying like it's going to happen like right now almost. But I had enough kind of presence of mind. I knew I was in between waking and sleeping state, you know. So I did have a little bit of presence of mind there that I was able to kind of not lose my shit. But I was, you know, I was able to kind of say, well, yeah, I know I'm going to die someday, you know, and she's like, don't you forget it. And, you know, really kind of driving that point home that my mortality, you know, trying to make me aware of my own mortality and kind of shoving it in my face.
How long ago was this?
That one was probably a good, probably about 20 years ago.
Oh, wow.
So, but it was one of the creepiest experiences that I've had. I've had other ones that were kind of along the same lines, but none of them were as impactful as that one.
Yeah, those symbols, that's intense. So how did it reconcile at the end? How did it end?
Essentially, I just basically told her that I accepted that truth, you know, that, yeah, I know, kind of thing. And then it just kind of ended, and I went back to sleep. Like, it kind of ended with me falling asleep, I suppose. And I've heard a lot of people that have had kind of like old hag experiences, those kinds of sleep paralysis experiences that people have, that a lot of times they end in that same way, where they'll end where they're like, I don't know how I fell asleep after that, but suddenly, you know, eventually I just fell asleep, you know. I know somebody really close to me experienced a devil in her bedroom door, just the head of the devil floating there. and
she was in that paralysis state?
Yeah, well, she said, I know she was in a paralysis state because she said she felt like if she moved, it would come right at her, and so she couldn't move. And I know that a lot of times when people are in that paralysis state, they'll have some sort of justification in their mind for why they can't move.
Yes.
Like they think that something will happen if they move, or maybe something's sitting on them, preventing them from moving. But the brain kind of tries to come up with an excuse for why you can't move.
Right, absolutely.
And she said that ultimately the way it ended was she just fell back to sleep. So I don't know how I fell asleep with the devil's head floating in my bedroom door, but but I did. And yeah, so that's basically how it resolved with mine as well. But it was me coming out of sleep, and then I kind of fell asleep, but then I woke up like really shortly after. So when you're getting near the beginning of the longer you've been asleep for, the shorter your sleep periods are, because you'll fall asleep and you'll go through a sleep cycle, and then you wake up, and then you go back to sleep and you wake up, and that happens several times throughout the night. It's just that that short period of time when you're awake is so short, and you're still groggy, and you just forget it every night. But when you get really aware of how your sleep cycles work, then you start to become aware of every time when you're waking up in the night. And at the end of each sleep cycle, there's a very brief period of waking. And each period of sleep gets shorter and shorter as you get closer to the morning.
Yeah.
And the amount of percentage that sleep cycle has of dreaming, or REM sleep, where dreaming is most likely to occur, gets longer. So at the beginning, your first sleep cycle of the night
is a long sleep cycle with a very short dreaming period within it. And at the beginning, closer to when you're about to wake up in the morning, you're having shorter sleep cycles, but most of it is dreaming.
Yeah, and this is why some people set soft alarms, timed to try and trigger more consciousness in the process, to get more.
Yeah, there's tricks.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's tricks that you can use to wake yourself up, or even during the day. Like one trick that I've used is, when I was a teenager, I had a digital watch that I would have beep just once every hour and a half, or it would go like beep beep every hour and a half, and that's roughly how long an average sleep cycle is.
Mm-hmm.
So I was training my brain to like think in terms of sleep cycles and check my state every hour and a half.
I too did that, and I found it most effective. Was it effective for you when it turned around into your night side experience?
Yeah, well, I found that it was one element that did help get it into my nighttime psyche. Because basically anything that you drive into your psyche with habits, if you form a habit, you're gonna just do that thing that you habitually do.
Right.
Anytime, when you're dreaming, right, you're gonna eventually do something that you habitually do while you're awake in a dream. You're gonna eventually do it. If it's a habitual thing for you to do,
yeah, it's like
you're
muscle
gonna eventually
training.
do it in a dream. Yeah.
What was Jerry? You had a question.
I have no idea what it was.
Oh, sorry.
It was like a half hour ago. It's okay.
I know. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Okay, so moving down this tunnel, what do you experience? I guess this is twofold, and it's always different with people who are rather prolifically aware of the process of dreaming. So do you experience time shifts, like prophetic stuff where you see possibly future stuff, psychic stuff, and also how does deja vu for you tie into all of this?
I don't know. I feel like the more you get into dreaming and esotericism in general, the less normal causality seems to be the way that things go. I think that what some of this does, what being a prolific lucid dreamer, astral explorer, onironaut, and esotericist, what these things do, I think, is they help you train your mind to think in fourth dimension. So usually, most people, most of the time, are thinking in two dimension. We walk on a plane. We don't often we usually go along the surface of the earth for the most part. We do go up and down stairs, and we go up and down elevators, and we go in airplanes and things like that. But the way our brains kind of developed over the course of evolution, we're still mostly in kind of a 2D, two-dimensional kind of mindset. And only now, we're starting to get into the third dimensional kind of mindset when we can do these things like go up skyscrapers and fly in airplanes and things like that. We are starting to think more in three dimensions in modern times, but that's really new. But with the occult stuff and with dreaming, I feel like in a dream, time is experienced way different. You can just rewind. It's malleable. You can experience like a fourth dimensional being would in a dream. You can skip around. It doesn't have to play out in a linear manner like it does when you're awake. So I think that is one of the things that happens when you start to experience dreaming, like especially lucid dreaming, a lot, and you're very aware of that. Is that you start to think in that sense where time isn't a linear thing. It's just how we experience it most of the time because of the limitations of our brain.
Right, but because of that, are you able to get a sense of future timelines for yourself? So,
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, it's hard. I never
And how is it different from remote viewing too?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I don't know if I see it in the sense of prophecy in that sense, but more, it's something that I kind of always did when I was even a kid. I remember looking in, I always used to love time travel stories, like in sci-fi, like, how Star Wars is massively influential in certain people's lives because when they were a kid, they watched Star Wars and it was like such a mind-blowing experience that it had a profound impact on them. Well, for me, that was Back to the Future instead. That had like a really mind-blowing effect on me, and it got me thinking in terms of traveling through time when I was a kid. And I remember having all kinds of mind experiments about what would happen if I could time travel, and trying to remember my phone number so that just in case if I ever traveled back in time, I could call myself, So I remember when I was a kid, I used to look in the mirror sometimes and try and imagine what I was going to be like when I'm older, or sometimes if I had to make a decision, and I still do this, if I have to make a decision, I'll kind of ask my older self, what are you going to think about this decision 40 years down the line, old man Jeremy Crow? Are you going to, what do you think I should do? And I'll ask old man Jeremy Crow what I should do in this situation, and I'll get answers, and I use that to try and help guide my life in a real way. I've made real decisions, like big decisions with that method.
I think it's a very occult principle, and including, drawing off the power of your own death.
Yeah.
So I love consulting old man Jeremy Crow. That sounds like it should be like an oracle book. Right. So in your I'm trying to avoid using the word psychic. There's just so many words right now I don't want to use that I would normally use. But so have you seen things play out? So you had a dream, say 5 years ago, or even 2 nights ago, and then all of a sudden you see those events play out. So it was, it's unwinding in this dayside experience as kind of a psychic. You psychically saw this through your dream eyes, to use kind of older language.
Well, I have experienced a lot of, I experience synchronicity to the point where it doesn't even really faze me anymore. I kind of grin, when I experience it, and I'm like, oh, cool.
I'm just like, right, I'm right on path.
Yeah, and I kind of see it as kind of part of the same realm as what you're describing. Like, I did have one experience, and I reluctant a little bit to tell it because sometimes people are like, that's BS, but it's something that really happened. one time when I was at the office, I was kind of stressed out. It was a busy day, and I just decided I was going to go take a break. And I went up. It was a tall building in Toronto, and I went way up to like one of the higher floors, and I was standing there looking out the window out across the city, and I saw like a plane, and it just came into my head, or what would I do if I saw that plane coming at the building and like clearly going to crash? And my mind went through this whole like scenario of what I would do, like to try and get quickly down the stairs and things like that, right? And it just was this thing that happened in my head. Like I just saw that plane, and I thought about that whole scenario. And then I went downstairs, and less than 20 minutes later, on the big screen we had the news on, right? We watched the second plane go into 9/11, like the World Trade Center. That was that day.
Yeah, so you were getting that download.
We saw the second one live. And so, you know, I feel like there was something there, you know, something happened where I got some sort of probability wave, you know, washed over me or something. I don't know how to describe it, but something happened there. It's too much of a coincidence.
Right. And then you think about all the people, all the eyes viewing the events as they're happening, and how that might transcend, you know, wave links and layers of consciousness to create that. What about you experience
Nikola Tesla? Nikola Tesla he believed that the brain was more of a receiver than a generator.
Yeah, we'll get there.
Yeah, I'm with that.
I thought that was a question we had about near the end. I thought we had that in there about whether consciousness is local or non-local.
Yes.
Oh, whether it's happening on the cloud and we're just receiving.
Exactly. Which puts kind of a twist on all the mind control nonsense that's out there right now. It's like,
well, you know what? It's interesting. Yeah, well, that brings to mind, what was it, The Magical War or something like that? I can't remember the name of the book, but I have a copy of it by Dion Fortune. It's the journals of the attempts that they made during World War II. Her and her group of esoteric students and the community of esotericists she was part of got together regularly to do these semi-guided meditations where they would build up this astral construct that they were used to try and inject into the group mind to resist Nazism. And it was kind of like the Magical War of Britain or something like that, I think it was called. So that was a magical attempt to inject the group consciousness with a specific
programming.
Yeah, specific symbols, specific concepts that would presumably protect or harden against, you know, some of the Nazi ideologies and any psychic attacks that they were doing on their end, you know.
Yeah, it's like a firewall.
It seems almost
and
like
actually I found the copy. I have it right here. The Magical Battle of Britain is what it's called.
Check it out. The Nazis counterattacked that with the Hitler Youth. I would say.
It's a fun.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different. There's a bunch of different groups that were doing some interesting things on
in that
both
period,
sides.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
The Vril.
Several sides. Yeah, there wasn't just two sides, really.
Yeah, I think that's also making it. I just hit an oil lamp.
It was the reptilians versus the tall whites, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can break it down. This is all our after show.
The
So,
Arians versus the Orions.
what do you think about deja vu? Do you experience it? And when you do experience it, what do you think it's tied to?
I don't really know. There'll be periods of time where I'll experience it really frequently, and then there'll be like long stretches where I don't experience it at all. I've heard that there's some sort of scientific explanation of that the conscious mind is receiving the information at a slight delay compared to the unconscious mind, and that creates a sense of, oh, I already knew this.
Even though like 30, 40 years can pass from, like, you pinpoint, you have a deja vu and you're like, oh, this is something I dreamed up 30 years ago. That's like a big belch of time.
Well, yeah, I've definitely had an experience where I felt like, hey, I had this dream 30 years ago or something like that. Yeah, like exactly what you just said. I've had that experience. But I didn't have a record of writing that dream down back then. So maybe I misremembered.
And again, the brain.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's possible. It's possible it could be a trick of the brain. I feel like I want to allow that. I don't want to delude myself into thinking that isn't a possibility. It may not be the answer.
And how many other tricks of the brain do you suffer from?
A lot.
Okay.
A lot. We all do, don't we?
No, we don't. Optical illusions, perhaps, but tricks of the brain, I can't think of any. Unless you're thinking of something I'm not thinking of as a trick.
Well, I mean, if you've been in a non-lucid dream, then that's a trick of the brain, isn't it? Your brain is telling you that something's happening.
Sure. And
you're believing it. And then you wake up and you were lying in bed the whole time. That's kind of the biggest trick, isn't it?
Yep.
And sure. You know what? It's interesting, and it's so tricky. It's so tricky because I've been in a dream, and I've done a state test where I've said, am I dreaming? And I've tried to determine whether I'm dreaming or not. And I'm sincere in my test, and I determine that, no, this is not a dream. This is really happening. Like this is a waking experience.
And I love the Rosemary's Babies reference right there.
And then I wake up, and then I'm like, oh my God, I was able to fool myself into thinking it was real. Even though I tested it, I questioned it in the dream, and I tested it, and I determined that it was a waking experience. It fooled me. It's that convincing.
What consciousness in and of itself is. What do you think dreaming is?
I think that it's to borrow terms from technology, I think it's kind of the GUI, or the graphical user interface. It's the mechanism that makes it easier for us to interact with the environment by giving us a model or a symbolic representation of what's actually out there. Because, we have an experience, but that's not what's actually there. We're experiencing a representation of what's there based off of information our senses gathered about it. Like there's a book, that Magical Battle of Britain book, right? Mm-hmm. I can look at it, I can touch it, and I can experience the book, but am I actually experiencing what's there in reality? Or what my experience is actually internally generated based off of data collected from it, so there's kind of like, it's almost like watching a view screen on a camera, instead of looking at the thing itself.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to use language to explain what I'm trying to explain. It's also the cave, like Plato's cave, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're not directly experiencing the raw reality. We're collecting information and then compiling it and generating kind of a holodeck, fully immersive holographic experience that represents it based off of the data we have about it. I mean, that's how optical illusions work, right? The brain misinterprets the data that's coming in and gives you and generates an experience that's not true to reality.
So
or that doesn't accurately represent the reality. We can't know. We can't know because we can't experience it directly.
Yeah, that's
not through the dreaming. That's what dream is, though. That's what the question I'm trying to answer here is: what is dream? It's
right.
Everything we experience. It's our interface. It's a symbolic map, but it's fully immersive, and we're experiencing it right now. Like while we're awake, we're experiencing the dream. It's just mapping out a different level of reality.
It's a dream with rules.
So that's showing us the reflection of what is considered reality.
Yeah, it's presenting to us a symbolic and practical, useful, fully immersive representation of reality based off of the information that we have available,
which we cannot know only through these other means. So if I can,
I mean, like, I mean, there's a lot that our organism isn't capable of even registering. You know, like only a certain range of frequencies and intensities can trigger the rods and cones in your eyes to fire and send a signal to the brain. Mm-hmm. You know, if it's outside of that frequency range, or if it's outside of that intensity range, it won't cause those rods and cones to fire, and we won't have that data available when we're compiling our symbolic representations. So there's tons of information that we're missing, you know?
Yeah. Yes.
And so we have a very incomplete picture we have a very incomplete data set. And then we take that incomplete data set and then the brain generates a symbolic, immersive map.
So what about the state of death? So now we're talking devoid of the physical brain altogether.
So without the brain there, then presumably there's no ability to generate the dream.
Right.
So you would have an experience. You know, I mean, maybe there's nothing when you're dead. You know, I admit to that possibility.
Well, I think we all need to kind of maybe admit to anything being possible because it's all on the table as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I'm not going to claim I know what happens when you die in terms of like the experience of a person. But if there's anything, the thing that seems most likely to me is that you would have an experience of pure consciousness, unstimulated by experience, or at least temporarily. I don't know. Like,
Wouldn't that be the real reality then, as opposed to this where we're mucking around with our computer, aka the brain?
yeah, it's a pure level of reality. I would say it's about the only level of reality that you are capable of experiencing is your own pure level of unfettered consciousness. If you can get to the ground of being and shut down that hologram generator,
Mm-hmm.
which you can do, which is possible through several different methods. One of them being meditation. You can do that while just kind of meditating. You can get there. You can also experience a type of, it's kind of beyond lucid dreaming. Sometimes it's called the dream of clear light. There's a couple other names for it, but basically it's dreamless sleep that you're conscious during.
Mm-hmm.
You know how a lucid dream is a dreaming sleep that you're conscious during. You can also experience non-dreaming sleep and maintain consciousness during that state. It's difficult, and it's really uncomfortable at first, especially
How
because
so?
you're not used to it. Well, because you're not used to just experiencing existence itself without a sensation. You know, without colors and, you know, images, sounds, tactile sense, you know, without the senses feeding you data.
So basically,
Or, you know,
you're the one thing I haven't heard you mention at all is energy. So what you're basically talking about is just being aware of the energy that's surrounding you, not necessarily the sensations or feelings that it's generating.
well, you can have an experience that there's no experience in a sense. Like, now you can, there's two different things here. There's you can have that ground of being while sensory experiences are present. So you can bring that into a sensory experience. But you can also have a completely non-sensory experience where it's just your raw consciousness and no dream. And when I say dream, I mean any experience like waking or dreaming where you're, you know, having a point of view. You know, it's hard to use words to describe it because
I understand. It's like popping out and looking at everything.
It's very yogic.
It's also like what people describe ego death with this mushroom trip type of
Or
experience.
DMT.
Or
right?
DMT, where you don't go anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so there are chemical ways of inducing state as well. But like what I think that might be what happens when you're dead or when your body stops working, your brain isn't working anymore. That consciousness won't have sensory inputs into it. And a lot of people, I think, will just kind of get lost because they maybe don't have the strength of consciousness to kind of withstand that for any length of time. It's because it's an uncomfortable experience because it's so foreign to just have that. You know, some people can't even sit in a room that's quiet for more than 2 minutes.
I know.
You know, let alone be in a room that when the room completely is not even there anymore. You know, let alone you don't just take all the sound out of a room. Take the whole room itself away too. You know,
And your body.
and then Yeah, and your body, exactly. Take away all of that, and then see, and it's just purely you with no sensation externally intruding
Well,
upon your conscious.
this makes me wonder too, with the modern world, at least, with how attention spans have gotten so short. Everything is very high flicker rate, and attention spans go with that. So whereas it used to be you could, most people read books, now it's flash books. It's everything's a meme. And so we strip this away through the experience of
TLDR.
what's happening on a mass level, though, like through the death process, when everything is stripped away. I wonder, this is just a ponder. I'm just pondering, but I think
pondering made me think of something. Are we in a way getting rid of language over time? Because we're starting to move a lot towards icons and memes and symbols and emojis. Are these not symbols of our language?
Hieroglyphs?
Yes, back to hieroglyphs.
Sure. We've kind of made an arc, and if you want to say that, take the biblical stories of the scrambling of the languages and everything, before that time we were symbolic people for the most part. So I don't know, it was just an interesting thought, a pondering on your pondering.
But before that also, it seems like there was still a connection to long periods of nothingness, right? Nights where there's no interference. And so now because there's so much going on, and then moving back towards glyphs as language, it's a definitely a mix up now, like what happens on a collective level. So we're morphing back, less language, more glyphs, which are, I think, a more potent form of language. And then now more flicker rate around us, more distractions, less being with self and being in stillness and understanding kind of the selfless experience of your world. I'm not talking about dealings with other people. I'm talking about with yourself.
Yeah, well, I think that's a big problem because we're increasingly, because of the influence of social media, we're increasingly defining ourselves based off of how much attention we can command.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And,
it's very vampiric.
Requiring external validation for anything to have any meaning. Like, it's not meaningful unless you get, 1,000 views or, 100 likes, or,
that in and of itself is a form of mind control, hypnosis, whatever, because those generate, excuse me, specific types of chemical reactions in the brain, similar to gambling or addictions. So,
absolutely,
you get trained for
dopamine.
Yeah, exactly. Hits the dopamine receptors, and that's creepy when a program on a computer somewhere else is controlling your dopamine.
Yeah,
man.
The network itself, Facebook is triggering dopamine releases in your brain and your reward centers. Anytime you get a notification that somebody's liked a thing, or
and there are people like that when they get emails. It doesn't matter. I mean, it depends.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things they say is that people are more likely to interrupt whatever they're doing to go read an email immediately when it comes in, instead of they checking their email, every other hour. They'll be constantly on call with their email. If one comes in, they get a notification immediately and they'll check it immediately.
Yeah.
And they'll interrupt whatever they're doing to check it.
Yep.
And, when has that ever been the case in history?
And so how's that actually going to affect people when they do move into a state of
telepathy,
nothingness? So, Jeremy,
well,
do you have time to stick around for the after show? Sorry. think I was speaking over you.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I think we should ask questions of our chat and wrap up the Nox Mente section, and then talk a little bit of woo-woo with you in our post-Horus.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah. Sure.
All right. So if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. I only think Lee's here right now. Yeah, it's just Lee. Lee, you got any questions? Other than that you forgot already? I need the Jeopardy music.
Alex Trebek is a Canadian.
He is. I'll take S words for 100, Alex.
I find really pompous. Like in the show, a lot of times, like when somebody gets it wrong, he'll like be like, "No, it was actually," and then he'll say the answer as if he knew it.
Yeah, he's a smug Canadian. That's what I used to think.
He's like, "Oh, no, it was this." He has the answer written in front of him. Like, but every time he's like, "No, like, come on, man, it was this." He has that kind of almost like he's about to say, like, "You should have known it. I knew it."
Yeah, it's annoying. I think if you've ever seen the Saturday Night Live spoofs on that with Sean Connery as a guest.
Yeah, I did see that one, the celebrity Jeopardy parody.
Busting his stones. Oh, it's hilarious. All right, so I'm calling no questions because no one's got any questions. So thank you, everybody. Sorry for the late start and all that. And we got a good show. So thanks for watching. Jeremy, thank you. Do you have anything to talk about? Any website or projects you'd like to mention? Or
yeah, if I could plug the Flambeau Noir. That's a conference, International Left Hand Path Conference, called Flambeau Noir, and that means black torch, and that's essentially the vehicle to pass the black flame from person to person, down through the ages, essentially. And so this is a gathering of people who are not necessarily left-hand path, but I wanted to frame it as a left-hand path conference so that anybody who did come there is at least open to, these types of ideas. So it's about getting people in the same room, sharing information, and collaborating with one another. We're going to have some bunch of new names, some people that have been around for a while that maybe you haven't heard of, and also some bigger names too, like Michael W. Ford will be there. Thomas Leroy, the head of the sect of the Horn God, is going to be doing a presentation. We have a whole bunch of amazing people presenting. Paul Frederick, he's the host of Daemonosity 2.0 and involves with a lot of Setian projects. He's going to be presenting as well. Bunch of really cool people. It's going to be amazing. There's going to be a live music element as well that we're calling Darkness Audible, and that's happening.
Oh, it sounds
the
wonderful.
Weekend of April 27th to 29th this year, 2018, in Portland, Oregon, USA.
Oh, it's right here where I am. It's on my birthday too.
Oh, cool.
Jerry, you need to come. We'll go
right.
together.
All right. Deal.
Jeremy, you're going to see Jerry and I together. That would be awesome.
That would be amazing.
Is
And that's the other
E.A.
cool thing
Coetting
about
going to
it
be
too.
there?
Unless he buys a ticket.
All right. Okay. Well,
I definitely am going to make that happen since it's right here.
we'll do some magic, baby. I put the link to your show in chat. I'll put it also in the show notes. So that's about it. So cool. Come, be sure to come check us out next week. We've got Emily Moyer from Off Planet Radio. She's the other half of Randy and Emily. She's a trip. So that should be a good show for sure. So thank you all again so much for watching, listening, whatever, and see you next week. Bye.
Big love to all of you. Thank you.